It all starts with the heartbreaking discovery of my ex-wife's infidelity. My ex-wife, Danielle, and I were together for 6 years. Our relationship was the typical story of work colleagues who eventually fell in love. We both were working at the same company until I got offered a much better position in another company so we could date more openly. We eventually got more serious, got married, and had a beautiful daughter called Sarah. It had been years since I had seen my parents, so for Thanksgiving, we decided to make plans to visit them and spend some time with them. Sarah also needed to spend some quality time with her grandparents to feel connected to my roots. When we arrived, we were warmly greeted by my parents, who were extremely excited to meet Sarah. That night's dinner was great with my parents as we talked about all the moments we had missed being there for each other. Sarah was getting tired, so I excused myself to put her to bed as Danielle and my parents continued to talk. Like all kids, she started pleading with me to allow her to play video games with her for some time. Looking at her pleading eyes, I finally gave in. We played a game on her tablet for a while. It was so interesting that I lost track of time until I realized it was too late and she needed to sleep. I took the tablet from her, put her to bed, and headed out. I heard Danielle still talking to my parents, so I sat down on the couch in our living room to continue playing the game on the tablet. I was busy playing when suddenly there was a text message notification on the top. I couldn't help but glance at it. It was from someone named Chad, who said, "Missing you already." I immediately froze in the middle of the game as the words sank in. I couldn't comprehend what I had just read. Why was my 8-year-old daughter getting texts like this from someone named Chad in the middle of the night? I immediately checked the message tab and quickly realized that the tablet was connected to Danielle's cloud. That's when it hit me: this tablet actually belongs to Danielle. She would have had her iPad synced with this tablet, hence the messages that were coming to her phone were also showing up here. She must have forgotten to log out of her iCloud account on this tab before giving it to our daughter. Confusion etched my face as I tried to deduce why she was getting this kind of message. I opened the Messages app with a bated breath and clicked on Chad's message. My mouth was wide open in shock as I scrolled through the message, and I discovered a series of intimate conversations between Danielle and Chad. I clicked on his contact picture and gasped in surprise, realizing that he was our neighbor. I had hardly met him once or twice, but reading my ex-wife's messages with him, it was clear that their relationship had crossed into dangerous territory. Their texts were filled with details of all their meetings and plans. They had talked about our relationship in excruciating detail, where Danielle had revealed how she didn't love me anymore but didn't want to be the one at fault for our relationship to break off. She mentioned how much she hated the fact that I didn't give her any attention because of my work, and that she was glad to get all the love and attention from him. Chad, in turn, had written how he loved being our neighbor so he could come over to visit her whenever me and Sarah were out. Their text messages were so graphic and disgusting to read that I wanted to puke in disgust. I couldn't believe that I had stumbled upon Danielle's secret affair. It was a shocker, the kind that makes your heart race and your mind struggle to process the reality unfolding before you. My mind raced and I started taking photos on my phone of all their text messages. My hands shook and I was worried that Danielle might come over and find out that I had discovered her affair. I wanted to keep it quiet for the time being. I didn't want my daughter to see these kinds of messages accidentally while playing on the tablet. She might be a kid, but she wasn't stupid. I didn't want my daughter to find out about any of this because she was too young to go through this. After I had collected all the evidence, I unsynced and wiped the tablet clean, knowing that Danielle's phone would also have all these messages as additional proof. The entire night I tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep, trying to understand why my wife would cheat on me. The next day, with my daughter Sarah out for brunch with my parents, I decided it was time to confront my ex-wife about the affair that tore our family apart. I needed answers, and she couldn't escape this time. When I brought up the affair, she flat out refused to accept it, like a stubborn child caught in a lie. But I had evidence, messages, calls, and the undeniable truth. As I showed her the proof, she crumbled. The tears started flowing, and the guilt she'd been hiding spilled out. Through her sobs, she admitted to everything. She said she needed me but blamed my work schedule for her wrong turns. Chad, the guy who'd become a wedge in our marriage, apparently played Mr. Comforter during the rough patches. She regretted it all, or so she said. I asked the one question I dreaded hearing the answer to: how long had this affair been going on? Her answer hit me like a punch in the gut. She replied that she had been sleeping with Chad on and off for a whole year. I couldn't believe it. A year of betrayal from my partner while I worked my ass off to provide for our family. Disgust washed over me. It was one thing to suspect, another to have it confirmed in such plain words. The weight of her confession settled in the room like a dark cloud. The trust we'd built over the years shattered, and all I felt was the raw pain of betrayal. There were no fancy words to describe it, just a sickening feeling deep in my gut. At that moment, I broke down. Tears streamed down my face, and I couldn't hold back the flood of emotions that overwhelmed me. My ex-wife, Danielle, continued to attempt to explain herself, but her words were drowned out by the tumultuous chaos of our shattered marriage. The fight between us continued, escalating with each revelation. We were deep into the confrontation when my parents returned from taking Sarah out for brunch. They looked at our faces, reading the distress and turmoil written all over them. Concern etched on their faces, my dad took Sarah to her room, trying to shield her from the storm that had erupted. Alone with my mom, I spilled the painful truth about Danielle's infidelity. My mom listened, her face transitioning from confusion to disbelief, and finally settling into a deep frown. Danielle, on the other hand, continued to cry, as if she were the victim, not the perpetrator. Attempting to justify herself, Danielle spilled out a string of excuses about how my demanding work schedule had driven her astray and how she would have never done something like this had she received my attention. According to her, Chad had become her source of comfort during our rough patches and I shouldn't be blaming her right now. She regretted it now, she claimed. My mom, trying to comprehend the magnitude of the situation, and struggling to understand everything, went red in the face when I mentioned that Danielle's affair had been going on for a year. She looked Danielle straight in the eyes, her disappointment evident, and without mincing words, she asked Danielle to leave their house immediately. The room fell silent as I stared at Danielle, who continued to cry and act like a victim. I told her that she needed to leave and that I and Sarah would continue to spend the holidays here and would return later as we had originally planned before all this fiasco happened. Danielle, feeling our judgment stopped arguing, simply nodded and walked upstairs to pack her clothes. In about 10 minutes, she was gone. As the door closed behind Danielle, the weight of the situation settled in the room, and the silence that followed was deafening. Alone with my thoughts, I couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions, betrayal, anger, and a profound sadness that seemed to consume me. The next few days were excruciating as I navigated the aftermath of the revelation. My mom, having witnessed the turmoil firsthand, filled my dad in on all the shocking details. His reaction mirrored hers, a mix of disbelief and shock. The betrayal cut deep, not just for me but for my parents who had welcomed Danielle into our family with open arms. Sarah, our innocent 8-year-old, kept asking where her mom was. Faced with the challenge of protecting her from the harsh truth, I lied, telling her that Danielle had to leave abruptly due to work commitments. The pain in her eyes when she asked about her mom tore at my heart, but I couldn't bring myself to expose her to the harsh reality just yet. The next few days were a blur of emotions and attempts to cope with the shattered pieces of our family. My parents provided a pillar of support, offering comfort and understanding as we processed the betrayal that had unfolded. The holidays, initially planned as a joyous family reunion, now felt tainted by the lingering shadows of deceit. We tried to salvage what was left of the festive season, but the air was heavy with the weight of unspoken words and broken promises. Each moment was a reminder of what had been lost, and the pain became palpable as we struggled to find a sense of normalcy. Inevitably, the time came when I had to face the reality of returning home. The idea of stepping back into my familiar surroundings where my wife had slept with another man was pissing me off. I knew our marriage was over and I needed to let Danielle know so she could move out soon. I had already made up my mind and no one was going to change my mind. When we returned home, Danielle was waiting for us. She looked at us with pleading eyes, an apology hanging on her lips. Sarah, oblivious to the storm that had unfolded, ran into her arms, embracing her as if nothing had changed. It was a painful sight, witnessing the innocence of a child juxtaposed against the wreckage of a broken marriage. I decided that we needed to talk, and we retreated to a private space away from Sarah's curious eyes. Danielle started to apologize again, her words filled with remorse and promises of change. She claimed she had cut off all contact with Chad, but I couldn't help but scoff at the notion. Chad, after all, was still our neighbor, and there was no way she could have severed all ties. A bitter laugh escaped my lips as I confronted her with this reality. She looked at me, bewildered, as if I had lost my mind. I looked her straight in the eyes and told her that it was too late for apologies, that no matter what she said or did, I was done with her. The shock in her eyes deepened as the weight of my words sank in. You cut off contact with Chad? Really? I asked, my voice tinged with sarcasm. He lives next door, Danielle. You can't avoid him even if you wanted to, she stammered, trying to explain, but my patience had run out. I couldn't bear the lies and deception any longer. This is too late, I asserted firmly, each word carrying the weight of finality. I'm divorcing you. Her eyes widened in shock, a mix of disbelief and realization playing across her face. The truth had finally caught up with her, and the consequences of her actions were laid bare. She tried to plead, to make amends, but my decision was resolute. I had endured enough, and the only way forward was to sever the ties that bound us. As the gravity of my words settled between us, silence hung in the air. There were no more words left to say, the damage was irreparable. Eventually, Danielle did move out and I filed for divorce. Little did I know that the battle for custody over our child, Sarah, would turn our lives upside down. The divorce dragged on for months. Thankfully, we had signed a prenup so Danielle and her lawyer couldn't demand me to pay her anything, especially after the evidence of her having an affair and destroying our marriage in the first place. Amidst the legal proceedings, we reluctantly agreed on a 50-50 custody arrangement for the sake of our beloved child. I dutifully paid the child support as mandated by the court, hoping it would contribute to providing a stable life for our daughter. Danielle moved back to her parents' place, and despite the shattered remnants of our marriage, I still maintained a decent relationship with her parents. The weeks were divided, with Sarah spending equal time with both of us. The arrangement was meant to ensure that our daughter would grow up feeling loved and supported, no matter the circumstances. During the days when Sarah was with me, I made an effort to create special moments. We went shopping for essentials, and I indulged her in picking out new toys or clothes. However, as time passed, I noticed a troubling pattern. My ex-wife seemed to be neglecting our daughter's needs, refusing to let her wear nice clothes or enjoy the little luxuries that should be a part of every child's life. Whenever I went to meet Sarah, she would be wearing old clothes, and it perplexed me as I knew she had a closet full of new outfits. I cautiously broached the topic with Danielle, asking why Sarah wasn't wearing the new clothes I bought for her. Danielle brushed it off, claiming that Sarah was saving them for special occasions. I felt a twinge of confusion but decided not to push the matter. Co-parenting was challenging enough, and I wanted to maintain a semblance of peace for Sarah's sake. Despite the unanswered questions, I focused on providing the best experiences for Sarah during our shared moments. We made memories together, whether it was a simple day at the park or a more elaborate outing to her favorite places. It became our way of navigating the complexities of our altered family dynamic. I never wanted my daughter to grow up thinking that we didn't love her, so even though my marriage had failed, I put all my love and attention on my daughter. Now, turning to the story, just last month, as I drove back to my house after my office, I was met with an unexpected sight: my daughter standing alone in the driveway. Concerned and somewhat shocked, I got out of the car and hurried over to her, fearing that something might have gone wrong. I asked her what happened, and Sarah explained that Danielle had dropped her off an hour ago on my porch. I was shocked at how recklessly my ex-wife could just drop our daughter off without informing me first. Had I known, I would have left work immediately and not let our daughter stand outside for an hour. Danielle knew that I usually got off work at 6 p.m. and was back at home by 6:15, but that day I had some work pending, hence it was already 7:30. I was upset that my ex-wife had just left our daughter all alone where anything could have happened to her. After ushering my daughter inside my place and heating up some pasta for our dinner, I dialed Danielle to express my concern and frustration. Danielle picked up the call and I could hear a lot of noise in the background. The noise in the background sounded like a lively environment, and I couldn't shake the feeling that Danielle was at a bar or some social gathering. Frustration crept into my voice as I asked her why she hadn't given me a heads up before dropping our child off. Her response caught me off guard. Danielle retorted that Sarah was my daughter too, emphasizing that parenting was a shared responsibility. Her nonchalant attitude only fueled my frustration, but as I continued talking to her, I began to sense that something wasn't right. There was a slurred quality to her speech, and it dawned on me that she might be under the influence of alcohol. Deciding that this wasn't the appropriate time to have a serious conversation, I told Danielle that we would discuss this matter when I dropped off Sarah the next day. She laughed dismissively and suggested that I read the note she had given our daughter. Perplexed, I called for Sarah and asked about the note that her mother had apparently given her. Sarah fished around in her pocket and handed me a crumpled note. The message inside explained that my ex-wife did not want to take care of our daughter anymore due to the inadequacy of the child support payments. I froze in shock and bewilderment. I was paying hefty child support every month, and despite this, Danielle had the audacity to demand more from me by putting our daughter in danger. It struck me as a desperate move, but instead of reacting emotionally, I decided to take a strategic approach. Swiftly, I called Child Protective Services, CPS, and the police to file an official complaint against my ex-wife for abandoning our child. I had CCTV footage which proved that she had left our child on the driveway all alone. The police took this very seriously and asked me for the location so they could arrest her for putting our child in danger. After filing an official complaint, I talked with my lawyer after full custody. Danielle had cheated on me and I had let that go because of our child, but now that she had put my dear daughter in danger, I couldn't just let her go. We decided to file a motion to get full custody with the police report that I had filed against her for abandonment. Her parents called me in shock, wanting to know why Danielle was calling them from jail, and I filled them in. They were extremely concerned and shocked by the news. While they acknowledged that my actions were motivated by a desire to protect our child, they pleaded with me to reconsider pressing charges against Danielle. Despite their emotional appeal, I remained steadfast. The safety and well-being of my daughter were paramount, and I couldn't let Danielle's reckless actions slide. I explained to her parents that filing an official complaint was not an arbitrary decision but a response to a situation where Sarah's safety was compromised. I emphasized that the legal action was a necessary step to ensure that such incidents did not happen again. As I spoke with conviction about the need to prioritize Sarah's welfare, their pleas grew more desperate. They begged me to drop the charges, citing Danielle's mental state and the potential impact on her life. However, I stood firm, reiterating that I had tolerated much for the sake of our child but would not compromise when it came to her safety. The tension between us heightened as they grappled with the harsh reality of the situation. In their desperation, they proposed alternative solutions, like supervised visitations or counseling for Danielle. While I appreciated their concern, I couldn't ignore the fact that the abandonment incident had been a severe breach of trust. In the end, their pleas fell on deaf ears. I had made up my mind to pursue full custody to ensure a stable and secure environment for Sarah. I informed them that in a few days, I would have someone go to their place and get everything that belonged to Sarah back to my place so Sarah could continue to stay here with me. When I informed Sarah about the new development, she was beyond ecstatic. I know how important it is for my child to have peace and stability in her life, so I was happy for us. In a few weeks, we were summoned to court. My lawyer presented my case, revealing the neglect and manipulation orchestrated by my ex-wife. We showed the judge the note that Danielle had given to Sarah to give to me while leaving her at my doorstep for over an hour without informing me. We also pointed out the fact that every time I bought my daughter something new, my ex-wife would refuse my daughter to wear it, which is why my daughter would always be dressed shabbily. While Danielle's lawyer tried her best to defend her client, the judge saw through Danielle's attempts to manipulate the situation and recognized that the child support meant for our daughter was being misused, perhaps for her own personal benefit. In a surprising turn of events, the judge ruled that not only was Danielle going to lose custody of our child, but she also had to pay a $25,000 penalty for misusing all the child support I had been paying her that year. The judge, understanding the gravity of her actions, ruled that this penalty would also be covering my legal fees. I was honestly not expecting this and had never in a million years thought that Danielle would get a penalty. It was a bitter victory, but one that secured a brighter future for my daughter, free from the clutches of a mother who had lost her way. Since this court ruling, I feel so at peace knowing that I am the only one who is going to be taking care of my daughter. As expected, my ex-wife and her family have continued to message me saying that I shouldn't have punished Danielle so harshly. They thought it wasn't a big deal that she abandoned our kid and kept telling me that I was going to be a terrible father. I would like to know if Ida for taking action against my ex-wife for doing this to my daughter. Update 1. Thank you everyone for understanding the gravity of the situation and also understanding why I asked for full custody in the first place. I have no idea if Danielle is going through a mental breakdown, and honestly, I don't want to know that also. Whatever may be the case, she should have talked with me first. She did not have to take such a drastic step by leaving our kid all alone in the driveway. The last couple of weeks have been bliss. I can do anything for my little one, hence I have been spending the last few days creating a routine for both of us. Our mornings now involve waking up together, with me helping her get ready for school. I've even been watching numerous YouTube tutorials, gradually honing my skills in crafting the perfect ponytail for her. Regardless of what Danielle and her parents might believe, my commitment is unwavering. I'm determined to provide everything for Sarah so that she never feels like she's missing out on anything. Update 2. It's been a month since my last update, so forgive me, but I have been very busy with my life. The reason for this update is a recent revelation from mutual friends about Danielle's pregnancy. Apparently, she's 3 months pregnant with Chad's child. When Chad learned about it, he pleaded with her not to proceed with the pregnancy, but Danielle insisted on keeping it. In response, he left her, which explained her erratic behavior lately. Danielle found herself in a financial bind. She couldn't turn to her parents for more money, fearing eviction. Consequently, she resorted to selling the new clothes I had been providing for Sarah. This clarified why our daughter couldn't wear the new outfits, and Danielle had been concocting stories about saving them for special occasions. It also dawned on me that her note demanding increased child support was likely an attempt to secure more funds for her second child. What disgusted me the most was the sheer irresponsibility of her actions. Despite being aware of her pregnancy, she left Sarah at my doorstep and went out drinking. It's a level of negligence that's difficult to fathom. I'm grateful I fought for full custody of my daughter, considering what Danielle might have put Sarah through with the arrival of her second child. Update 3. It's been 6 months since my last update and life has been going great so far. Sarah and I have only gotten closer, and I can proudly say that I think I'm doing a good job as a single parent. Danielle has not attempted to contact me or show any inclination to meet Sarah over the last month, so hopefully, she doesn't disturb our peace anymore. With New Year's on the horizon, I've arranged a surprise for Sarah, a trip to Disneyland. Knowing her deep love for all the Disney characters, I'm eagerly anticipating the joy that will light up her face when she discovers the magical adventure awaiting her. I'm determined to create beautiful memories and continue to cherish the moments we share.